Joining us now, former Governor, Republican of Virginia, also ran for president, Jim Gilmore. Governor, good to have you.
Good, John. Great to be on your show again.
Let's go right to Zimbabwe. You heard the montage we played, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson calling Friday for a return to civilian rule in Zimbabwe, saying the country has a chance to put itself on a new path. Should we really be involved in what's going on in Zimbabwe? Why or why not?
Well, I certainly don't think we're going to parachute troops into Zimbabwe, but the United States can, of course, provide moral leadership and political leadership by making statements as to direction. We are still the leaders of the free world worldwide. People in Zimbabwe will have access to information about what we think, and I believe that talking about moving more to democracy away from a brutal, murderous dictator is probably a good thing.
So where do we proceed from here?
Well, I think that it's going to proceed without any involvement by the United States. As I said, we're not going to exercise direct military force or anything into that area. But if we can provide a leadership that legitimates political activity there, we ought to be doing that. The real big picture issue is that there are authoritarian regimes worldwide that have decided they're going to offer a different form of government than the democratic West. And that includes China and Russia and Iran, as well as, of course, our misfit toys, the North Koreans. And the United States and its Western allies has to assert that we are actually the ones that are right, and the rest of the authoritarian world needs to begin to empower their own people through democratic processes.
Governor, what do you think of what's going on right now in Saudi Arabia with the, I guess you could call it, corruption purge of Saudi family members and other people in the government or around the government that the regime thinks has been overly corrupt, many of them being imprisoned, if you will, in the Ritz-Carlton, if you could call that imprisonment, and also the Saudis involved in getting the Lebanese prime minister to basically kind of abdicate or whatever he's done, al-Harimi. What is going on there?
Well, I don't know. I'm trying to get sequestered myself into the Ritz-Carlton, but I haven't been able to do it yet. But I'm working on it. Look, I'm coming down to Virginia Beach tonight to give a talk down there to the Republican Business Council on the election and on the way forward for the state and way forward for the United States. I'm looking forward to that. But one theme I definitely intend to say tonight is to try to wake people up to the fact that we're actually in a world war right now. And it may not be shooting war everywhere, although it is a shooting war in many places. But we don't have to have a complete conflagration to be in a war. And the war is for the struggle of the future of mankind right now. Well, the Saudis understand this, that they're actually engaged in a war right now in the Middle East. Mm-hmm. They all are over there. For everywhere from Lebanon, where the prime minister just resigned, throwing the political situation there into chaos and undermining Hezbollah, which is a shooting war with Israel, to Iran's role there with international terrorism, particularly with their role in Yemen, where there is an absolute shooting war going on between Yemen and Saudi Arabia. So the Saudis are essentially trying to begin to position themselves for that conflict in a better way, and that's what they're doing. They're beginning to consolidate their political situation there because they understand that they're in a direct conflict with Iran. Now, fortunately, we don't think they're going to have a nuclear weapon imminently, but I can assure you of this. If the Iran deal stays the way that it is, and the Iranians actually move towards a nuclear weapon in the future, the Saudis will do the same, and then it's Katie bar the door over there in the Middle East.
Total mess. Governor, when you became governor, you had a divided House that was very close, and you gave a few Democrats an opportunity to serve in your administration, which then gave you control of the House of Delegates at the time. Do you see Ralph Northam using the same strategy?
Well, he might, if he can find Republicans in the legislature that he thinks would serve well in this Democratic administration. He might have a little bit of a struggle, though, because he ran quite a left-wing campaign. And the question is, does he intend to govern as a left-wing governor, like California's governor or something like that? If he's going in that direction, he may struggle to find Republicans that are willing to break away and to serve with him, opening up Republican seats. John, look, we can't sugarcoat this. This was the worst election in the history of the Republican Party of Virginia. The turnover of the 15 seats in the House of Delegates was devastating, and it means that we're going to have an entirely different political situation going forward. Again, I want to remind you, John, what you and I have talked about many times. What I was trying to do when I became the governor was to finally, once and for all, bring the first majorities to the Republicans in the House of Delegates and the state Senate in the history of Virginia. The Democrats had been in control basically since the Civil War. They were very draconian. They were very brutal in the way that they conducted politics. And I thought that a balance was necessary going into the 21st century, and I made it my job to change the politics of Virginia, which I think I did. So now what you're seeing is a lot more back and forth that the people have an opportunity to have. As long as the Republicans govern well, they'll be a majority. If they don't seem to be if they're governing the way they should, then there's now the ability to have a change anyway.
So, sum up this recent election in Virginia on November 7th. How did it happen? What does it mean?
Yeah, I'll be doing a lot more depth on this tonight when I get down to Virginia Beach. But in summary, Gillespie, by the way, I think he ran a very commendable campaign. I think he ran hard. I believe you and I both said on this show that we thought maybe that he was going to win.
Yep.
And it really looked like that he was closing. It looked like that he was coming on. In the end, though, I think that what was going on there was that I'm not privy to his internal polls, but from the outside, it looks like he felt like that he wasn't getting the support of the Trump Republicans the way that he had to have in order to be competitive. So he went on television with some very strong ads, particularly something that was against MS-13, and I actually thought that an anti-crime message was not a bad message to close with. But the way that the race had been set up, it was highly racially toned. The Democrats had made the race. So when he came out, he was talking about MS-13. That was seen as an insult to the Hispanic community, and actually the African American community took it as an insult. So that, combined with a much more sophisticated turnout program, gave enormous majorities to Ralph Northam across the state in the populated areas, and it swamped Gillespie. So he may have not have had any other option or any other choice, but what happened, you just can't fight with the reality of what happened. A lot of the liberal areas of the state voted in enormous majorities for Ralph Northam because it had become such a highly emotionally charged election, particularly on a racial basis. So they turned out in big numbers and swamped him.
Can a Republican ever win statewide in Virginia again? I mean, now the Democrats have won 10 in a row, the last round by historic margins. I mean, you look at these numbers. Ralph Northam won Fairfax. This is one city by 139,000. More than Trump lost to Clinton. I mean, it's an incredible number. How does a Republican ever win again in Virginia, Governor Gilmore statewide?
I'm going to answer your question, but I'm going to underscore what you just said. The vote in Fairfax was absolutely enormous. It's the big boy in Virginia now, and they voted 255,000 for Northam, only 117,000 for Gillespie. But they're not the only ones. If you look at Alexandria, they voted 80% for the Democrat. Arlington, over 80% for the Democrat. Henrico, my home county, that elected me Commonwealth's attorney, voted 70,000 for Northam and only 43,000 for Gillespie. So there's a demographic shift going on, and that is the issue. Now I'm going to tell you the answer to your question. Yes, a Republican can win in Virginia. Absolutely can win in Virginia. I carried Fairfax. I believe McDonald carried Fairfax.
Yep.
If the race turns on race and gender, we're not going to win. Because it's just too easy at that point to make the demographic voters of Virginia vote for a left-wing party and a left-wing program. We have to find a common theme that will work for people all across the state, and particularly in the populated areas. Now, I did that When I said that we were going to cut the car tax, people in Fairfax County cared a lot about that, and they voted for me in a majority in Fairfax County. McDonald was doing a theme of economic growth and jobs. That people in Northern Virginia care about that. Henrico, Newport News, Virginia Beach. People care about these common issues of how you move the state forward in a positive way. If the Republicans find those themes that people care about in the populated areas and push them hard and push back against the notion that everything is race and everything is gender, then the Republicans can win in Virginia, and I'm confident of it.
All right, so you see a pathway forward, even though they have lost 10 in a row. I'm not sure how your math works, but I'm going to go with you on that. Governor, you are flirting with the idea of running for U.S. Senate in 2018 for the Republican nomination for that. Are you any closer to a decision, and when will you make one?
We're looking at the pieces of that, and I guess I'm not flirting so much as people are flirting with me. I've had contacts, particularly other people in Washington, that have asked me to run. But at the end of the day, we have to have enough finance to make sure that the people can hear our message. What you and I have talked about this morning is the message, and like you said, you're not sure that the math works. I think it can work. I'm confident of it. We're going to have to make the case that it's time for a change. Because if you're going to run against Keene or you're going to run against others in the future at statewide, they're in charge now, absolutely lock, stock, and barrel. They got everything. So the question is, are they going to be able to move the state or the country forward with a left-wing approach? I don't think they can. So in consequence, we have to offer a reasonable alternative. So we're looking at it to see if we've got the money to get our message out, then it may be a doable race. We're looking at all that right now. And I would encourage your folks out there to keep their powder dry. Maybe we're in a position to do it, but I'm not. I have not decided.
But when are you gonna make a decision? I mean, the primary is going to be set for. We assume it's going to be a primary set for June of 2018. That's only 7 months out.
It certainly is. Well, you got a candidate. Corey Stewart's declared that he's going to run. There are 3 or 4 other people that are going to run too, but I think the heart of the matter is this. The left in this country is trying to consolidate their power in order to move the country in a left direction. And they control a lot. They control the media. They control the Democratic Party. And I don't think the Democratic Party has to be controlled by the left, but presently they certainly are. And I'm concerned about the business community. If the business community does not want to see a change, then the finance is not there to make a change, and we'll have to see things go downhill a lot further under a left-wing government in the United States and in Virginia before the business community will wake up. So there's still a lot of looking at this that has to be done. I recognize that time is burning up, but you got good news here. You got a couple of candidates that still want to run.
Well, you got Corey Stewart.
Yeah, they probably can't win, but that's another story.
Well, they're going to run.
Go ahead, I'm listening.
Nick Fredericks is likely House of Delegates member from Central Virginia. He's likely to get in the race, as is E.W. Jackson. So you would be the other one. Could be interesting if you get in. I hope you do, because I think you'll add a lot to the debate, and I think you'll make it very, very interesting. So I hope you find a way to get in this race. And look, the more choices that Republicans have to choose their nominee, I think the better for everybody, right?
John, I'd like to say something positive about the president for just a minute. He was elected to try to make change in this country. Right. This was a resentment from the regular citizens of this country that want to see a change away from the leftward drift of this country. And he's out there fighting every day, and believe me, the American left is fighting him every day, especially in the media. But the point is this: if we can motivate people, both in Virginia and across the country, to say that we have to have a change away from this leftward direction of the country, then it's possible to win. And I think the president's trying to do that, and I think that there's still room for change in this country, and we're going to see what happens in Virginia this coming year.
Let's get to Al Franken. If you were in the Senate right now, if you were to be elected, do you think you should resign?
If we have a situation where we disqualify people based upon these reports without trial, just based upon the somewhat strong press reports, then sure, he should resign. I think that where we're headed here, though, is back to the democracy in this country, and that is that we expose everything. I know what you're thinking about. You're thinking about the Roy Moore thing.
That's my next
40
question.
years ago, this guy appears to have made transgressions that are just unacceptable. If that is the case, and the people of Alabama believe that is the case, I think they won't elect him. They're going to be comparing that to putting somebody in the Senate that is going to fight this leftward drift in the country, and that decision will be made by the people of Alabama. Likewise, it seems to me that we now know what Franken did, and he needs to go up before the people of Minnesota and be beaten, it seems to me. The real sin of Franken is not merely his misbehavior, but the fact that he's a left-wing guy pushing the country in a left-wing direction.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say this. I'm not just trying to just throw epithets around here. You're not going to have a legitimate economy that's going to actually grow the country and grow jobs and grow wages, which people in those communities we just talked about ought to care about, with this economic approach that's going on by the American left. That's why it's so critical to pass this tax reform bill in the Congress, and I think they're going to, in order to offer a brighter future for people out there listening to me right now who want jobs and opportunities. They got to grow the economy. And furthermore, it's a danger to the national interest in this country. If you don't have any money, you don't have any military. You don't have any ability to act overseas. The country has to grow.
We can get to 4.5% growth if we can get this tax cut plan a done deal. You're in Hampton Roads tonight. I'm out of time. John Fredericks Radio Network, thanks for being with us. Your calls when I get back. Keep it right here.